From Value Invest Asia, this is The Asian Entrepreneur. We explore the hidden stories of successful founders, business leaders, and investors in Asia. Here's your host, Stanley Lim.
Hi guys, this is Stanley from Value Invest Asia. In this episode, we're going to talk to Mr. Daniel Glinert from Sarine Technologies. He's actually the chairman of the board of Sarine. And as you guys know, Sarine is a company listed in Singapore, but actually based in Israel. It is one of the key suppliers to the diamond manufacturing process. And this is a fascinating interview, and I have lots of fun interviewing Mr. Gilnert. In the interview, you will realize that Mr. Gilnert is actually a very technical person, and so he really knows the industry inside out and understand where is the pain point and how Sarine is going to help solve some of the issue currently in the industry. He also shared a lot about the prospect of Sarine and how Sarine is going to move down the value chain of not just serving the manufacturers, but also going to go right down to the consumer level and helping improve the whole industry, the whole diamond industry. So this is an absolutely fascinating story. I really hope you enjoy it. Here we go. Could you maybe just explain a little bit, how's life growing up? What is Israel like?
Well, I don't think that growing up in Israel is that much different than growing up anywhere else. There may be a bit difference in that the issue of national security is more pertinent. It's more in people's minds, sometimes on a daily basis. Actually, during the period I was growing up, there was relatively calm. Mm-hmm. So I think that really is, you go to school, you come home, you do your homework, you ride your bike. I see my grandchildren, and I don't think there's any difference between them and somebody growing up in New York or Singapore, mm-hmm. or maybe even Beijing. Maybe okay. Pyongyang is different, but if you're in a Western type country mm-hmm. with a normal, so to speak, economic environment, right. then I think it's more or less the same.
Okay, and of course Israel has been termed as a startup nation by many people. And is that something is starting a business or starting something? Is it almost influence to you guys very early on in the society?
I think today more than in the past. I think Israel has always been at the forefront of technology. Mm-hmm. Again, a lot because of the national defense requirements. But I don't think there was really any kind of philosophy or indoctrination when I was young of setting up startups. Today, yes, clearly it's different. Again, I have the benefit of now having two generations after me, and I have one of my grandkids keeps on coming up with ideas about how he's going to make money and so on. So I think today it is, but I think when we were young, actually, I must admit that setting up my first company, or actually my first company I set up as a partnership with my brother, so I'm not sure that counts. Who was a professor of computer science. Okay. I was studying computer science, and he had customers who wanted services, so we set up a partnership where he sort of hired me, but this two brothers, yeah. And we would do all kinds of work for various Israeli companies. Right. Is that exceptional? I don't know. Mm-hmm. But the company which I really started later almost started by accident.
After your studies, you straight away joined the Air Force, or what happened next after that?
Well, okay. The way the Israeli military service works, most people enlist right out of high school. Okay. And they go through various types of training, whether it's infantry or armored corps or whatever. But you can, if you so choose, and if the military sees value in it, go to college first and get a deferment of your service.
Okay.
So I actually chose that path, and I actually started studying right in the university, in the Israeli Institute of Technology in the Technion, after completing high school.
I see. Okay.
So it was only after I finished my studies in the university that I went to into the armed forces.
Okay. And then after your required draft period, you stay on in the army as well?
Well, again, because you take this path, you actually sign up for 5 years, and you serve as an officer in your profession.
Okay.
So, in a way, that's also, just to give you an example of how things change. When I finished college, I had a degree in computer science. I mean, today, everybody knows what a degree in computer science is, right? But I actually started studying physics. And only after 2 years, they opened up the first faculty of computer science in Israel. So I was one of the first 10 graduates of computer science in the state of Israel. If you go to the Israeli Institute of Technology today, in the computer science department, there's this big picture on the wall, our first 10 graduates, and I have the honor, whether it's dubious or not, somebody else could decide, of being up on that picture.
Wow.
I look slightly different, obviously. More hair, both on my head. I also had a beard at the time.
Okay.
So when I got to the military, they actually didn't know what computer science was. So after all kinds of testing and so on and so forth, we got assigned to various branches. And I served in the Air Force in a unit which was actually tasked with the first digital applications of, for instance, airborne fire control systems.
Okay. Which
today, of course, every airplane has digital radars and digital this and digital that. At the time, it was all analog.
Right.
So I think I've been very lucky, actually, because I grew up a period when the world was changing.
And after your service in the Air Force, you went to the States straight away? Or?
At the very end of my service in the Air Force, there was this project which was being initiated for the Israeli. Some of it was for the Air Force, some of it was for the Intelligence Corps, and it was being the lead contractor was a company in Texas, and they were looking for people who, at the end of the day, would be going back with the system and helping to support it in country. So they recruited. It was myself in software, another 2 guys in hardware. It was a very small team, and the idea was that we would be the core going back. But at the time, we were supposed to be working for a larger Israeli company, which had the contract.
I see. And which year was this?
Oh wow! This was 1977.
1977. So you were on project in the States, and that links back to the part that you say when you came back, you started your first company.
Well, when the project was done, of course, late. Projects are almost always late. But like I said, by that time, the Israeli contractor had lost interest in supporting this. And the American contractor had a problem because they had a contractual commitment to the Israeli Air Force to provide a team to support it. So basically, the program manager called me into his office and said, "Would you like the contract?" And I said, "Well, I've never, yes, I've been responsible for people both in the Air Force. After all, I was, I left the service as a captain and then later was promoted to a major. still recruiting people, paying them, paying taxes, all this other kind of stuff. So he said, there's no problem. We'll put you in contact with a lawyer, an accountant. They do this thing, as one of the mill. And that's basically how it started. In fact, my initial company was called, when I got back into Israel, it was called TICI Software Systems. Mm-hmm. The TICI actually stands for Texas International Consulting Incorporated. And nobody, of course, knew it. That's how the company got started. Uh-huh. And basically, we started off doing service on this contract.
Right.
And because we had unique type of understanding of real-time issues. Real-time is when you actually are interfacing with something which has to be done in a certain amount of time. Like, for instance, if you're building a radar, then every time the radar rotates, you have to process all the data which was collected during that rotation, because otherwise you're never going to be in sync with the actual hardware.
Okay.
So we actually set up this company and started offering services to more and more entities, most of them defense-related, the Israeli aircraft industries, Elbit, the other large Israeli companies.
So just to get it clear, the company that you founded, TICI, right? It started off just contracting for the Air Force, and then you
it started
expanded.
Contracting actually for this American company for the Air Force. But quickly branched out and grew from 4 employees. At the time, they were, for instance, designing and building the Lavi fighter, which never took off, or actually it did take off. But then basically the F-16 was a better solution. At the largest point, we had almost 180 employees.
Wow, okay.
So it was a pretty big company.
Okay. And it's founded by you and a group of friends? Or?
It was actually founded by myself, and then very quickly one of the guys I brought on became a partner.
Okay.
A guy called Gilad Moran. He was sort of like the salesperson. He was out getting new customers all the time, promising things we couldn't deliver. But that's how salespeople work.
Yeah.
And then we started eventually branching off also into industrial solutions.
Right.
And actually that's how I got involved with Sarine, because in 1993 there was this other very similar company with the same kind of philosophy, same kind of 2 entrepreneurs who had come out of the intelligence systems.
Okay.
They'd actually been friends with my partner because he also came from the intelligence, not from the Air Force.
Okay.
And they had this very similar company, and they had been working with both industrial customers and military ones. And they basically got tired of the operational side.
Right.
So they sort of half asked us, half offered us to swallow them.
Okay.
So we did, basically. It was not a transaction which involved money. We just basically swallowed their organization.
Okay.
The 4 of us became partners. In fact, Mr. Uzi Levami, who was the CEO up until last May, he was one of the partners of that company.
I see, okay.
And we basically took over all the operational side. And among the other projects that they had been working on was the project which basically evolved into Sarine, the company.
I see, okay. And then just to backtrack a little bit, and this was during the year 1980?
This was 1993.
1993, okay. So you started your company back in the 80s?
Well, I actually started the company back in 1982.
Right, okay. So this is roughly 10 years
There was
after
like
that.
10, 11 years when we were basically working and growing and expanding.
Okay.
And then in 1993, we basically absorbed this other company into us.
Which is Sarine
It was a software systems engineering company. It was called Shalev, actually.
Okay.
But it had worked on Sarine.
Right.
And the agreement under which it had been working was that a third of Sarine belonged to them,
I see.
and 2/3 belonged to the gentlemen who were basically gem and diamond traders and polishers
Okay.
who had come to them with the idea of applying technology to that industry.
I see. So Sarine is just one part of their business at that time.
Sarine was just one part of their business, that's
Okay.
correct, yes.
And after you swallow this company, did you take notice of Sarine?
Not initially, to be honest. I mean, in 1993, I was appointed to the board of Sarine, but that was almost in name alone. Yes, I would participate in the board meetings. It wasn't quarterly because we weren't a public company, of course. There was no real requirement to have a board meeting more than once a year.
Yeah.
I think we actually had 2 a year, something like that.
Okay.
But it was really very cursory, just listening. To be honest, I don't think I can honestly say I understood what they were doing. I'm not really sure I even cared. This may
Okay.
not sound very nice now, but it's the truth of the
because,
matter.
Yeah, you were doing your own business.
We were doing our own stuff. In fact, we were very focused at that time. Mr. Levamy, actually, we sent him in 1994 or 5, I don't remember exactly, right after we swallowed the company. We actually opened a branch in California.
Right. Okay.
And his job was to expand into the semiconductor industry.
Okay.
So I and he were really focused on getting that part of the business, the industrial software, systems engineering for the semiconductor industry, off the ground.
Okay.
We did a pretty good job of it. In fact, we actually spun off a startup which had this idea of how to make, how to allow machines on the fab floor. A fab is where they produce chips. How to let them communicate. Turns out a German company had the same idea.
Okay.
And we actually developed this little box.
Okay.
I don't remember what it was called. The company was called Equipnet,
Right.
to network equipment.
Yep.
And we sold it actually to an American company called MKS. They're a very big company. They do about $700+ million a year in sales.
Wow.
They're considered probably the most important supplier of fab infrastructure, which mostly, of course, is piping and there's all kinds of noxious gases and liquids and everything. So they do all that. They also have these monorails which transport the wafers from station to station, and these elevators, and they were expanding very rapidly at that time in the late 90s, and they bought us and this German company. They decided not to decide which was better. They bought both of us, and they ended up taking the software. This was Uzi. Uzi was already involved in that. He went and worked for MKS for quite a few years. I don't remember exactly, but they took the software element from one of us and the hardware element from the other,
Right.
and they created this protocol, which is a much better way of doing things.
I see. Okay. Well, it seems that you are extremely busy during this period of starting new businesses and also growing your own business.
Yes.
What's the turning point that you started to take notice of Sarine?
Well, actually, it was very simple. When we got to 1999, we sort of got to this point. Uzi was off at MKS because part of the deal with selling equipment to them was that he had to come with it.
Okay.
One of the other original founders, a gentleman who at very early time was a director of Sarine, he decided to get less involved in actual earthly business, and he's sort of more, he became religious and he went to study Jewish studies, so he sort of, moved off into his own little world.
Okay.
And we decided to sell TICI.
Ah, okay.
And we sold it to a much larger Israeli company.
Mm-hmm.
And the other partner, who had been my partner, had to go with them as part and parcel of that deal.
Okay.
And I found myself in 1999, 2000, thinking, okay, what am I going to do next?
Right. Okay.
And we had Sarine.
Right.
And I'd been involved in Sarine, and I sort of started taking a much deeper look at it. And I decided that it has all kinds of potential.
Right. Okay.
The first thing I did was I said, okay, working with diamonds, working with gemstones is nice, but I felt completely incorrectly at the time, by the way, that it had limited scope.
All right.
Now I realize, of course, I didn't understand at all what the scope was and where we could take it. But at the time I felt that, a medical application would be much better because, how many people buy diamonds?
Yep.
Okay, but everybody goes to the doctor.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And we actually created an application using Sarine's technology for medicine,
Okay.
based on some of the very unique optics we had developed in the software. And we had this device which we sold both in Israel and in the US for dermatology.
Okay. What does it do?
It basically, one of the biggest problems with dermatology is, or in the critical parts of dermatology, I should say, those which can be dangerous, like melanoma or the other types of skin cancer. One of the biggest problems is identifying it at a very early stage, because if you don't catch melanoma when it's very, very early, it's lethal. It kills you. Very simple. Either you catch it or you die. Those are the two options. It's almost binary. And we had this idea, which was actually brought to us by one of our director's friends who lost a girl to melanoma.
Right. Okay.
And the idea basically was to find a way to allow a doctor to really know where you're coming from. Because today the standard of practice is that if you're considered a high risk, which is basically anybody who's Caucasian living in a very bright sun country, then you're supposed to be able to track your skin. And the only way to do that is you either look in, you know yourself, you look in the mirror, or your partner, whether you're married or have a girlfriend or a boyfriend or whatever, and they sort of say, hey, this spot, I don't remember seeing it, or it's changed or whatever. And then when you go to the doctor, the doctor looks at you, but the doctor has X patients a day.
Yep.
So he typically spends 7-10 minutes looking at you, if you're lucky. And then he tells you, I don't like this, maybe remove it. And the standard of care is that people remove a lot of skin lesions, and 98% of them are nothing.
Right.
So this is a very costly process to a national health system like in Israel. So the idea is to find ways to reduce the number of non-necessary operations.
Right.
Of course, these are simple operations, but they do scar you, because some of the parts of your body, especially the back, don't heal well.
Wow. Okay.
And of course, if you have to have an operation on your face, or if you're a lady, on your chest, you don't want that really. You want to wear a bikini afterwards or something.
Yep.
So we had this idea basically of creating the system based on digital imagery of recording the patient's skin in general and suspect lesions as selected by the physician. And then when you come back a year later, the physician obviously can't remember what you looked like a year earlier, because he's probably seen, I don't know, calculate, let's say he works 4 hours a day, 10 patients an hour, 250 days. He's not going to remember you at all.
Yeah.
I mean, he might remember you, but he's not going to remember what your back looked like. And he'll have a digital record. And we even created software which, by using all kinds of techniques,
Right.
analyzed and could compute very small changes in the size, in the border, and so on.
Wow.
And we got to work, and we got it approved by the FDA.
Wow. Okay.
It wasn't the diagnostic. It was just basically imagery and so on, so that FDA approved it.
Okay.
willingly, and we sold it in Israel and the US.
Right.
The problem was that it was very time consuming, and doctors don't have time to use it. So basically the way it was usually done in the hospitals, there was this volunteer nurse or somebody like that who would, the doctor would tell her what to image and then come back a year later and so on.
Right.
And it worked actually pretty well, only of course, again, technology outpaced us, because when we started, a digital camera for about 500K pixels cost $10,000. Today you have 15 megapixels on your cell phone, which you get for free. Maybe actually they're selling you a camera and giving you the phone for free. You have to make up your mind. But by the time it was really working well, digital cameras got to a point where you could buy a digital camera with 1 or 2 megapixels,
Right.
and they would cost several $100s. So our special device we created was basically obsolete. But the software still worked, and doctors, I don't know if they still use it, they probably use more advanced things already. I mean, this is like 15 years old. 15 years old in technology is like a previous generation, right?
Yep.
So that was my first involvement
Right.
with Sarine.
Okay.
I ran that for 3 or 4 years until we decided that it's not really going to take
Okay.
off for all kinds of reasons.
But as you're you're trying to penetrate the healthcare market, the diamond side of the business is still running.
The diamond part of the business was still running, and getting more and more sophisticated, because I think at the same year, in the year 2000, Sarine really had a very key breakthrough in its technology. Because what Sarine had originally done was to build a machine which looked at a rough gem, not a diamond, a rough gem. Mostly we were working on emeralds, and analyzing it and telling the gem's owner how to best cut it, and then actually doing the cutting and the shaping, because a gemstone is soft.
Yeah.
I mean, it's soft relative to a diamond. Obviously, it's not soft relative to an apple or something like that. But so it's easier to cut. So we actually built this very complicated machine which did everything. A rough stone came in one side, a polished gem came out the other. Completely non-commercial, because the actual part of cutting is very simple. But we took that technology and we applied it to diamonds. And diamonds is a much more complicated solution or issue because of a number of issues. The first issue is that a diamond, even in its rough form, is very reflective. So it's very hard to image it
Okay.
and to understand what's really there. And you know, just by the way, just to mention in passing, that isn't done. I mean, we started this back in 1995, and we just introduced this January an even newer system of modeling the diamond and imaging it that much more accurately. So
Right.
this is something which is constantly going through improvements. That's one problem. The other problem is that on a gemstone, on most gemstones, you don't care about what's inside. What you're really optimizing is its color. You want the green to be as deep green as you can.
Okay.
You want the red for a ruby. We may have heard of pigeon's blood ruby. That's a ruby which is very deeply red.
Wow.
And so on and so forth. For a diamond, the best diamond is colorless, so you don't care about the color, obviously, by definition. I'm talking about what is colloquial called white diamonds.
Yeah.
Because there are fancy colored diamonds, but that's a whole different issue.
I see.
And but what's very important is what's inside, because if you have a piece of black carbon inside a white diamond, it's very visible to the human eye.
Okay.
So when we started out back in 1995, there was a whole bunch of problems, and I think the first initial solution which we created in 1995 was very partial. It solved some of the issues, but it did not. But by far, it did not solve them all.
I see.
And then in 1999, 2000, we had one big important step forward, which is when we actually patented a method so that when you did finish planning the diamond, you could at least convey the information properly to the actual cutter. Because you have to think, you have to understand how a typical, today it's usually Indian, diamond manufacturing facility works. The rough diamonds come in, they're looked at and analyzed by specialists. Today, actually, most of the specialists is in our software, but at the time, they were more human. These people work in air-conditioned offices, at desks with fluorescent lights, and of course, nowadays, more and more with computers. And then the diamond is actually cut in a manufacturing facility where you basically have these machines which are different stages of the process, but at the end of the day, you have the people who are actually doing the faceting, sometimes even sitting on the floor, maybe sitting on a desk at a table where this wheel is rotating at 3,500 RPM. Typically, it's very hot, it's very humid, and there are huge amounts of very, very dangerous diamond powder. Because if you breathe diamond powder, that's very unhealthy. So, if you sit at a computer and plan a diamond, and then you have this printed piece of paper which says, cut it this way, the problem is that piece of paper is two-dimensional. The diamond is three-dimensional. It's amorphous, so you don't even know what side of the diamond this piece of paper represents.
Right.
What's worse is that this piece of paper comes out of your printer clean, but by the time it gets downstairs, literally downstairs, by the way, it's dirty and it's smudged, and sometimes the ink starts running on it because somebody may be sweating over it and so on. So in 1999, we patented a way of actually engraving on the diamond the blueprint for its operation. For its cutting. And that was the major step forward, because that at least took out one of the major issues of conveying the information in a completely non-ambiguous fashion. So that the cutter no longer had to get this piece of paper to figure out what did these guys mean. He had the stone, and the fine lines of how he was to cut it was actually marked on that rough diamond. And that was a major step forward.
Nice.
And that's when the technology started getting adopted whole scale.
Okay. And once you have this and patented this, you launch it, and everyone, it was in high demand straight away?
Everyone never happens. Though we started selling something like 1,000 systems a year.
Wow.
So we were selling at that time, I'm talking about the early 2000s, we were selling $35, $36, $37 million of equipment a year. Completely, though, on a one-time capital equipment type business model.
At which point do you decide that you need to take this company public, and why did you choose to go public?
Okay, the reason we went public was that we, again, you have to go back to 2003, 2004. That was the heyday of the so-called internet tech. I mean, in retrospect, people call it bubble, but at that time, people were developing technological solutions for everything from ordering pet food to groceries. I mean, you look at what Amazon is doing today, those roots are back in 2000. The fact that a whole bunch of companies went bust along the way, that's the way things work. But Jeff Bezos has basically, under this Amazon umbrella, which is probably getting too big for our own good, but that's a different issue. He's implemented worldwide retail in a completely different way. And people were starting to do that back in the 2000s.
Yeah.
And Israel, like you asked me before, Startup Nation, we have a lot of technical people, but you always want to be involved in the name. Like today, if somebody is offered a job by Google, Google has a developed R&D center in Israel, they will jump ship so fast you won't be able to see them going out the door. And every and every now and then it's either Google or Amazon or Intel or I mean all these companies, all of them, Oracle, all of them have R&D centers in Israel.
Right. Yeah.
And you come with Sarine, you're competing basically for the same employees, and what do you have to offer?
Right.
I mean, you can offer a salary. You certainly can't offer the glitz of being employed by Google because we're not Google, and we're never going to be Google. So what do you do? And at least one of the things we felt was that if we gave them if we could create a stock option plan,
Right.
so people, employees I'm talking about, could be or feel part of the organization, feel that they have a real upside in the success of the organization, we felt that was very important.
Okay.
So I think that was probably one of the key reasons. I mean, case in point, we raised money. We've never touched it. The initial 11 odd million dollars we raised, we have always had and still do have more than that in the bank. I mean, typically we have 30 to 40 million dollars in the bank, so we never use the money we raised, so that wasn't really a need. Yes, it did allow the founding members, people to take some of the money off the table. I'll admit that.
Yep.
But if I look at some of the money which our employees have made, I think relatively it's even more.
Yeah.
So I think it's worked out very well for our employees, and that's why we did it.
Right. Okay. And then there's interesting choice for you to choose it in Singapore as well.
Well,
right? What's the rationale behind coming here and listing in Tel Aviv?
That's we actually chose Tel Aviv.
Oh, okay.
I mean, no disrespect to Singapore. We didn't think of Singapore first. Israeli companies typically list either in Tel Aviv or in
New York.
or in the U.S.,
Right.
in New York.
Yep.
I mean, I assume you know this, that after the United States, Israel has the most companies listed on NASDAQ of any other country in the world. So, everybody thinks NASDAQ.
Yeah.
We were a very small company. We couldn't even consider listing in the U.S., especially if I don't know if you remember the Sarbanes-Oxley Act.
Yeah.
But at that time, it was just introduced because of all kinds of what was the name? Anderson, I think, which went under the accounting firm.
After Anderson. Yeah.
So we actually decided to list in Tel Aviv, which was a natural decision. We actually had a prospectus, we had written it, we had submitted it, and we had it approved by the Israeli equivalent of the SGX or the US SEC. And this was in March 2004, and it was supposed to go live in April, a year before we listed here.
Right.
Only then we discovered that our Indian distributor, which it's the sort of promo to piracy, but working in India, unfortunately, it goes hand in glove with illicit
Yeah.
copyright infringement and so on
Okay.
and so forth. And we discovered that our distributor was actually copying our machines
Wow.
and selling them under his own brand.
Wow.
So we parted ways, not amicably, I must add. And we went back, obviously, and told the Israeli underwriter bank that this had happened. And he very rightfully said, well, look, you just yanked the carpet out from under your major distribution channel where you do 75+% of your business. How can I take you public when I don't know, what's going to happen next month? Are you
Yeah.
going to be selling zero? Are you going to go on selling like you had been. And we, of course, understood this. I mean, there was no argument. This was a completely legitimate position to take. And we agreed basically to put the listing on hold for between 6 to 12 months, depending on how long it would take us to prove that our own subsidiary, which we had just launched, would be able to meet the challenge of creating the same volume of business or more. And that's what's happened. And during that time, it just so happens that the SGX was very avidly looking for foreign listings. And because I think of the special place Israel holds in Singapore, because of the sometimes less open, sometimes more open relationship Israel and Singapore has, they hired consulting firms to look for companies, and I honestly don't know how they found us, but they did, and they invite us down as guests of the SGX. That's how we met Mr. Chan, Philip Chan Kamlung. He was at that time VP of the SGX for new listings, not for foreign listings. And we also met, of course, some accounting companies and some legal companies, legal firms, and we met with some banks, with DBS and UOB and so on. And we came back to Israel, and it's not a one-for-one comparison, because the method of listing in Israel and the method of listing here is different. But at the end of the day, it really costs the same. And it's also the multiples they were offering us were basically the same. And at first we sort of, because of that, we didn't really see any value of listing in Singapore. But as time went on and we came back for a second visit, we started thinking about the fact that in Israel, really, if you're not in the top tier of companies, the Tel Aviv 25 or the Tel Aviv 100 at least, then you don't exist. I mean, yes, of course, there's Teva and there's Checkpoint and there's all those companies which are very well known and traded on NASDAQ. But then there's all kinds of other companies which probably don't trade at all.
Right.
And at some point, we just decided, let's give it a shot.
Right. Okay.
And we actually did it very fast. We decided on it in the summer of 2004, and in April we were listed.
Wow.
And I think if I remember correctly, DNN telling us we were the fastest listing they ever did. But I think in fairness, we were doing it on the backdrop of a previously approved prospectus.
So you have all the
So
things
it
ready.
wasn't, we were starting from completely scratch.
Yeah.
Yes, there were specific things which had to be done differently, but in fairness, not to pretend they were, superhumans or, Wonder Woman is Gal Gadot, she's Israeli, and so forth. But that doesn't mean that all of us are wonder people. But being serious for a second, I think it's worked very well for us.
Yeah,
I think the exposure we have had has been really amazing, considering the size of the company we were. We have had investors from California to New Zealand. We've had a very active investment community here in Singapore. So I think it's worked very well for us.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, it's definitely a blessing for the Singapore investors as well to get to access to such a unique company, I think, of Sarine Technology. Right now, for you guys, what is your key product now, and what are some of the new things that you maybe recently launched and also developing in the process?
Okay. I'll answer that in a second. I just want to touch on one more point, and that point is that in 2009-10, we actually solved the last issue of planning a diamond, and that was the ability to look inside.
Right.
And that's a very unique solution, which really, there is no comparable solution out there So we really have no legal competition. We have illegal competition because of copyright infringement in India.
Yeah.
But I think we're coping with that more and more effectively. So around that time, we felt that we had more or less completed our quest for a very robust solution for planning for manufacture.
Right.
And that's really that last key development, which was allowed them to push the solutions like the 52-54% I was talking about before. So the question is, what are we going to do next? And we took a look at the retail side of the trade. And we believe that we've identified the same needs or similar needs for technology. It's not the same because when you're manufacturing a rough stone, it's very simple. I have a rough stone. What's the maximum number of dollars I can get out of it in polished diamonds? Very simple and straightforward. I mean, there's all kinds of parameters which go on into that. The size of the diamond you cut, the quality of the diamond you cut. What are the markets like? Are the markets in China maybe now not so good because of all kinds of things happening in China? So I'll try and send the stones to the U.S. where they want different types of stones than they want in the U.S. than they want here in the Asia-Pacific region. So there's lots of things that go into it, but software can solve all that very effectively, and we've done it. But when you look at the diamond trade, there are lots of issues which I think consumers aren't always cognizant of, and that has to do, it basically stems from the fact that a diamond is not a definitive entity. I mean, even if you're saying, I want to buy my girlfriend a 1-carat round diamond, you have to say, okay, I want a 1-carat round diamond, so I understand the size and I understand the shape, but how much am I willing to spend? How much am I going to spend on its color? That is, it's non-color, basically. How much am I going to spend on its clarity? And it can be radically different. And that information is basically embodied in the famous 4 C's. But the 4 C's, up until today, at least, well, originally, aside from the carat weight, they were all subjective observations by experts who studied this field, got a certificate in gemology. This isn't a college degree. This can be a 6-month course.
Right.
And then started issuing these reports.
Right.
And the fact of the matter is that if you take 10 experts, give them the same stone, again, carat weight is not an issue because that's simply the stone is weighed. And cut is not an issue because we automated that back in 1992.
Okay.
So, I mean, or virtually all the labs who issue a certificate on cut grade use our equipment.
Right.
But that's computerized and it's very, of course, like I said, the technology 92 is not the same as today. We developed a system for Tiffany, which is used almost uniquely by them and somewhat by the GIA, where we can actually tell them the quality of the cut down to 10 microns.
Wow.
Which is ridiculous because nobody really needs that. But Tiffany is Tiffany and they wanted it. But color and clarity, people pick up the stone, compare it to a set of master stones under a controlled lighting system, and they decide, it looks closest to this one. And then somebody else says, you're wrong, it looks closest to this one. And if you take 10 gemologists, give them the same stone, you can easily get 3 different opinions.
Yeah, wow, okay.
Now, if it's an E or an F, that's one thing. But if it's an F or a G, that's 20% in price.
Wow.
So on a judgment call by somebody who is using his eyes, and then and color is it's really a one-dimensional issue because there's this set of master stones. This is a D, this is an E, this is an F. I might mention that not all gem labs use the same set of master stones, which is an issue into itself.
Okay.
But at least it's one-dimensional. Now you take clarity, it's a 4-dimensional issue. It's how many inclusions. It's what are they? Are they carbon? Are they cracks? It's where are they in the stone? And it's how big they are. And you have to make this very complicated judgment call. And again, your decision is 10-20% on the value.
Yeah.
And in our opinion, and I don't think we're alone in this opinion, because De Beers basically came out in 2016 and said the same. In the 21st century, again, remember where we started with in optics and where we are today?
Yeah.
There's no reason that it should be done that way.
Yeah.
And that's what we believe. And we've spent the last 3 or 4 years developing equipment which can look at a diamond and decide its color and decide its clarity. And we basically for the past year and a half have been running that in a test mode. And we've gotten it to a point where you give us a stone and we grade it, and it is probably going to be very, very similar to the consensus opinion of a group of highly trained experts. But we already have some retail customers who are wanting to adopt this new 21st century concept of automated, accurate, objective grading. It's also very exciting because it's artificial intelligence based.
Yes.
So it learns. It teaches itself
Okay.
over time and becomes more and more accurate.
Right.
Again, I shouldn't use the word accurate, but more and more consistent, more and more objective. And eventually, I think that people will also be using our 4Cs reports. We already have a number of very excited customers in the retail, which I am almost certain that, this year for certain, whether it'll be Q2 or Q3, I don't know, we're going to start seeing Sarine reports in the retail environment. And I think it's high time that technology is used to create a more objective report. And De Beers said so, but De Beers basically in 2016 came out and said that they opened their lab, IIDGR, not to public use, but to use by other manufacturers. There are other solutions for color out there. De Beers has a solution, GIA has a solution which works at least on some of their stones. As far as we know, there's no other working solution for clarity, and I think that that's really exciting, that we are again at the forefront of a technological transition, just as like we've been basically all along along the process. I think that where we're going today could be as instrumental in Sarine's next growth phase, like the launch of Galaxy was in 2010. That doubled our business, and I think that potentially we could, with all the stuff we're doing in the retail business and information technology after that, we could double the business again.
Right. Well, that's certainly...
It's not going to happen next year.
Yeah,
it's not going to happen overnight. It's probably not going to happen on my watch anymore, because I'm probably not going to stay the chairman for the next 5 or 6 years. But we are definitely setting the foundation for what could be very exciting growth.
Wow. Okay. Thank you so much for your time. Before I let you go, I have one last question for you. Say, if today you were to go back to your younger self, before you just get started in your business, what advice would you give your younger self right now?
I think the most important advice is to do what you really like. When you're having fun, or when you're doing something you enjoy, you're not always going to have fun. You're going to have the bank running after you. You're going to have employees annoying you. You're going to have all kinds of things, right? But in general, when you're doing something you like, then it's a completely different proposition than just working for somebody.
Yeah. Definitely.
And I think actually, you told me what you were doing. This is your idea. Why did you do it? Because you like what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
Same story.
Definitely.
Same story.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time. I
My
think
pleasure.
it's extremely interesting story that you have. We hope we speak to you again soon. Thank you. Hi guys, if you enjoyed the show, I hope you'll rate and review us on iTunes. And if you want to get the latest notification on our next show, do subscribe to us both on our YouTube channel and our podcast on iTunes. I'll see you around.